Good morning. This is the meeting of the Gwent Police and Crime Panel, which has been held at the Chamber, County Hall at Usk on Friday the 25th of January 2019. Can I first ask everyone to announce who they are in view of the fact that there are people watching this on the webcast. Can we start with Sian, please?
Hi, I'm Sian Curley. I'm Chief Executive to the Police and Crime Commissioner.
Jeff Cuthbert, Police and Crime Commissioner for Gwent.
Larry Thomas, Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Gwent.
Good morning all. Darren Goward-Pask, Commissioner's Chief Finance Officer.
Peter Clark, Member for Monmouthshire.
Peter Nuttall, Co-opted Member.
Jill Howells, Co-opted Member and Vice Chair.
Catherine Forbes-Thompson, Lead Officer to the panel.
Councillor John Guy, Chair of the panel.
Councillor William Routley, Newport City Council.
Councillor Jason Jordan, Newport City Council.
Councillor Stuart Healy, Blaenau Gwent.
Councillor Emma Rapier, Torvine County Borough Council.
Councillor Mike Jeremiah, Torvine Borough Council.
Councillor Tony Easton, Monmouthshire.
Borough Councillor Colin Mann, Caerphilly County Borough.
Councillor Jez Kirby, Caerphilly County Borough Council.
Borough. Now, if we just, there's a few announcements just before we start, and that's the fact that, first of all, we all realise that it's the funeral of Stephen Lewis AM today, and obviously we convey our concerns and everything to the family. Also, can I say that I want to make an announcement thanking everyone present. The fact that at our last meeting, £60 was collected for St David's Foundation, which it was a very good situation for St David's Foundation. If we now move on to the agenda, there will be some changes to the actual agenda, and we'll start off with the declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest? No? Any apologies for absence?
The Chair go now. There's Councillor Chris Forehead and Councillor Lisa Winnett.
Thank you. Now we move on to item 3. I say that there is a difference in the agenda. We're going to deal now with the Police and Crime Commissioner for Gwent's budget requirement and council tax precept proposal 2019 to 2020.
Thank you very much, Chair, Chair indeed, and for your consideration in terms of rearranging the agenda for the reasons you've alluded to. Can I, before I begin, can I introduce Mr. Jordan Watkins, who's a new member of my staff sitting there. He's a policy and research assistant, which means that we're pretty close now to having a full team in place, and his particular role will be to assist us in terms of research work, so that I will have my own independence in terms of policy research, which is very much part of the ethos of the office reorganisation. In terms of presenting the paper on our precept submission to you, I want to make some introductory remarks and to make it clear what our ask is. I will then be handing over to Darren Pask, my Chief Finance Officer, who will deal with any amplification that may be requested, and certainly with any questions as my Chief Finance Officer. At the end of that, I'll just make a few concluding remarks, if that's all right with you, Chair, and then, of course, we'll withdraw for you to conduct your consideration of what we've had to offer you. This does follow on from the presentation that we made at the Police and Crime Panel prior to Christmas, and indeed the Chief Constable's submission to you as well. Now, by way of introduction, I'm proposing to you today a Band D council tax precept increase of 6.99% for 2019-20, which equates to an additional £1.39 per month, or £16.69 a year for the average Band D household in Gwent. This council tax precept increase, when coupled with budget reductions and efficiencies of 1.929 million and a contribution from my reserves and committed funds of £428,000, balances my budget for 2019-20 and therefore enables me to fund statutory pay awards for existing staff, meet inflationary pressures and unavoidable cost increases, and most importantly, invest in a further 40 police officers to protect the most vulnerable individuals in Gwent, and to also bolster the front line to deal with such things as serious and organised crime. Anything less than my 6.99 proposal jeopardises the Chief Constable's ability to protect and reassure the public of Gwent, and particularly the most vulnerable amongst them. And therefore, I look to you today to support Gwent Police at this crucial time. Now, the detail of my council tax precept proposal is contained in your papers today, but I would like to take this opportunity to draw out some pertinent points. First of all, from a governance perspective, the Chief's budget bid, which you heard before Christmas, was formally received and scrutinised at my Strategy and Performance Board on the 30th of November 2018. The discussion which took place confirmed that the bid was compelling and robust, and you had the opportunity prior to Christmas to have sight of the Chief Constable's bid and to receive a presentation from him and members of the force on what is likely to impact upon policing in modern times. Can I say that I'm extremely thankful to the panel's finance subgroup, who have also taken the opportunity to scrutinise the details of my budget, together with Darren, and in particular to Councillor Mann for his written submission, which was extremely helpful. I would also like to highlight the results of my public engagement exercise, which saw a combination of an online survey based on estimated figures, and you may recall we began this earlier than in previous years, coupled with face-to-face engagement on updated and therefore more realistic figures, which concluded from the online exercise, from which we had 1,377 respondents, 846 people, or 61.4% of the total, supported that increase of £1 per month. And from the face-to-face exercises, once we'd had the details of the provisional settlement, and we suggested an increase then of about £1.50 per month. Out of 498 people met face-to-face, 396 people, or 79.5%, supported this, meaning that in total we consulted with 1,875 people. Now, Gwent Police is one of the smallest forces in England and Wales, both geographically and by budget. However, within its boundaries, it deals with the entire remit of the policing pressures that are faced nationally across England and Wales. Ironically, Gwent contains the most and the least wealthiest counties in Wales. Gwent Police deals with inner-city issues as well as rural crime, and organised crime groups exist in Gwent, as well as links to terrorism and domestic extremism. The M4 and major trunk roads bring their own policing needs, and the proximity to Cardiff and the International Convention Centre, being built now at the Celtic Manor Resort, brings international recognition to policing in Gwent. And above all is the backdrop of a 40% real-term reduction in government grants since 2011, and the next comprehensive spending review, plans of which are underway as we speak, which is scheduled for the middle of next year. Now, the provisional settlement was received the day before the December panel meeting, and as I said at that time, we'd not had proper amount of time to scrutinise it thoroughly. But I can now confirm that the provisional settlement provided me with additional council tax precept flexibility, allowing me the freedom to ask for an additional £24 per year, in a little slip there, in council tax precept, or £2 per month without calling a local referendum, which is what I would have to do in England. There is a greater flexibility allowed in Wales, but in essence, it's the same policy. Now, an extra £24 per year, which I could have gone for, will equate to a precept rise of just over 10% in Gwent. However, I'd like to remind you, as I said a minute or so ago, that I am requesting an increase of 6.99%, which incidentally is the lowest in Wales and pretty low by England and Wales standards, which equates to £1.39 per month for a typical Band D property. And this figure has been determined via a bottom-up basis, balancing the needs of policing against the affordability to local residents. Now, following receipt of the provisional settlement, the Police and Crime Commissioners Treasurers Society undertook a survey of commissioners across England and Wales to ascertain their likely council tax precept increases for 2019-20. Now, at the time that the survey was concluded, 36 responses had been received, and out of a possible 42, 36 of them, of the 36, 31% or 86% indicated that they intended to go for the full £24 per annum. As of yesterday, when I joined the phone-in for the board of the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, there are now 35 police forces across England and Wales that are going for the full £24. And I would remind you that we are not proposing anywhere near that. The provisional settlement also provided me with an extra core government grant allocation of 1.5 million and a specific pension grant of 1.3 million. When taken together, these two grants fall short by £400,000 in meeting the additional police pension costs forecast for next year of £3.2 million as a result of the recent public sector pension valuation. It is my intention, however, unlike a number of other police force areas, to meet this shortfall from the use of my reserves and committed funds and not through the precept. However, the long-term funding of these pensions costs is still unclear, although we do have the statement from the policing minister, Nick Hurd MP, that it will be addressed through the considerations of the comprehensive spending review, but clearly at this point we don't know exactly what that means in practical terms. We are also forecasting a further impact on changes that the Home Office wish to make to the funding formula used to allocate government funding to individual forces. This could see, based on our most recent understandings, in addition to only flat cash settlements moving forward, a £6 million reduction in government grant into Gwent from 21-22 onwards. This will be reflected by a reduction of £2 million per year for the 3 years following. I must also draw your attention to the capital grant received in Gwent. For 1920, it is expected to amount to just under £500,000. Now, for context, this equates to only 44% of next year's fleet requirements, therefore leaving the majority of the fleet requirements and the entire estate and ICT programs to be funded from revenue contributions, reserves and committed funds, or external borrowing, which we're keen to avoid. The final police settlement was received yesterday, and it confirmed the figures contained in the provisional settlement, so we know where we stand. Now, you will note in your papers the significant unavoidable financial pressures that we are facing, the largest of which being the increase in police officer pension costs falling upon the employer, unlike the Home Office previously, which is explained in some detail within your papers. In addition, the contribution rate for police staff pension is also increasing in each of the current and next financial years as a result of the latest actuarial review. Other significant unavoidable expenditure increases are further investment in police officer numbers to ensure both the force's public protection unit can meet its demand and the additional officers are provided to bolster the overworked neighbourhood teams on the front line. The M4 related pressures, and you know I accept at this point, we don't know what the future of the M4 relief road is going to be, but we're assuming that if it goes ahead, that there will be £3.4 million cost to us in terms of any dealing with any sort of public disorder issues. 2.5 million of the special grant we will be applying for from the Home Office, but there will still be a shortfall for us to meet. We have £250,000 to find to meet pressures on the medical examination budget in our sexual assault referral centres, a £160,000 investment in diversionary projects for women, 18 to 25-year-olds and ex-service personnel, and this will reduce operational demand from reoffending, and a £1 million recurrent revenue contribution to capital to mitigate the borrowing need to fund future capital programme. Now, I think historically, I just need to remind you that Gwent Police has delivered nearly £50 million of recurrent cashable efficiency savings, and in 1920 the force will deliver budget savings of £1.138 million, and on top of this, cashable efficiency savings of £0.79 million. This will contribute to the investment in the additional police officer numbers mentioned previously, thereby minimising what would have been a larger increase in my proposed council tax precept. And assuming an annual precept increase of 6.99% throughout the life of the medium-term financial projections, the current unmet recurrent deficit to 23-24 is still £4.18 million, which we will need to address. This deficit remains even after taking account of annual precept increases of 6.99% and known future budgetary savings and efficiency saving schemes. We cannot pass this opportunity without mentioning the B word. Brexit uncertainty could have significant effects on inflation rates and the weak value of the pound, particularly on commodities imported that the police rely on. Cost pressures has already been evidenced on ICT contracts, with major suppliers being based in the US and therefore charging in dollars. So at this point, I'd like to conclude my remarks, and drawing this proposal together, I'd like to highlight to you both the force's performance, both financially and operationally. For 2018-19 financial year, the force is forecasting to spend its entire budget, reflecting the fact that it has reached its full police officer establishment following 3 years of substantial police officer recruitment, resulting in over 400 new officers entering the force, with a net gain in the order of 150 to 160. We acknowledge that there's more to do, both for my office and for the police in Gwent, to provide the level of service that we really want to provide for the citizens of Gwent. But I present to you this paper which will enable us, if you agree it, to do that. I'll conclude at that point, Chair, but if there are further questions or clarifications required, this will be taken over by Darren Garwood.
Okay, the first question is from Jason. Are you happy with that? Absolutely.
Sorry, the money we're from, the budget you're saving and the pensions are coming from not out of the precept and not from your office itself, so yeah, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Rodley.
On page 32, I believe, page 32, council tax precept and base. I'm somewhat alarmed to see that you wish to set a council tax precept and thereafter rerun it right through to 23-24. I think this takes away and decreases the scrutiny of this police and crime panel. I've spoken to many people about this, and that this is a dangerous path for us to go down. And so if this was to come up in the future, I'm not quite sure what level of support you would have from this committee at all.
Thank you, Councillor Routley. What we've attempted to do throughout the MTFP is make it sustainable. So I've spoke here many years on sustainability of police officer numbers. We want to avoid boom and bust. So those 40 additional officers cost us £2 million a year. The 6.99% precept, which is in addition to what we've said previously around 4.99, so just between the 4.99% precept we've had previously and the 6.99, the differential is £1 million. So that precept increase pays for basically half the officers. The remainder of the officers need to be funded through additional efficiency savings elsewhere. So the major reason we want to avoid is a boom and bust of police officer numbers. It's taken us many, many years through the investment supported by this panel to increase police officer numbers. 400 extra officers in the last 3 years. Within the report explains how the actual establishments have grown to that time, that the Chief Constable is feeling confident that he's now reached a sustainable establishment to meet the demand in Gwent. To almost give 699 in 1 year, because you appreciate it's an annual exercise, it doesn't lend itself brilliantly to long-term financial planning, that significant parts of our income needs to be on an annualised basis. But what we want to attempt is to avoid that boom and bust. Let's put a sustainable financial model that brings up to meet what the Chief Constable is estimating the number of operational officers he needs every year to deliver that. So it provides that security of planning to meet demand and to provide that visibility and the vulnerability aspects of policing.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
I understand your needs, but the needs of democracy and the needs of us holding the Commissioner to account is paramount. At the moment, I am personally struggling to support the Commissioner's 6.99. I really want to support it. I want to support the Chief Constable, but I am struggling with that. And to have this, or the threat of this thrusted upon us, is totally and utterly unacceptable for me. You should be judged on your performance on an annual basis and nothing else.
Can I reassure Councillor Routley that this exercise, the annual exercise, that will continue? What we're seeking to do is to present our plans and our thoughts on the best knowledge that we have at this point. I have alluded to a number of unknowns which will become known during the course of the next financial year, but we thought that it's best to outline what our thinking is at this point, but there'll be no diminishing of the democracy involved. Each submission in future years will have to come to you for your acceptance or vetoing, as this is now. So there'll be no diminishing of your authority in this regard.
So just to confirm, all we're proposing today, all that we have the authority to agree today, is the precept increase for next financial year only. As the Commissioner has said, in a year's time, we'll be here presenting the precept increase for the 2021 financial year. And you can appreciate there's a huge number of variables within the report. But legally, I'm obliged to present a 5-year revenue position. So appreciate I paint that picture for 5 years into the future, because it does have significant impact on what we're agreeing today. But just to provide that assurance, we're only hopefully agreeing the precept for next financial year. In June, the June panel meeting of later this year, I will present updated financial forecasts, again in September and again in December in the run into January. And we'll keep that dialogue open with the finance subgroup. So we are not looking for approval today of a 6.99 recurrent precept to 23-24. It is only the 19-20 element, but I'm obliged to paint a financial picture for the 5 financial years. Hopefully that provides a clarity.
It does, and thank you for clearing that up. I think it's a nice try, though.
Peter Nuttall wants to come in on the same point.
You talked about 40 new officers, and you talked about the police constable thinking the establishment now, or the new establishment now, is adequate. Adequate to what? Compared to 2010's population and 2018's population, we're still way below the numbers of police we had in 2010.
Just quickly, financial aspects of that, I'll ask Darren to comment on. I don't think I used the word adequate. We want to build up our numbers. We now have, I think it's 1330 full-time officers. It's round about that figure. There is always some fluctuation because people could leave unexpectedly. But the important thing is that there is a net gain of about 150 to 155 officers since 2015. So we are determined to build it up, but you're quite right. I mean, prior to 210, it was about 1,500. We would like to build it up more. It's a gradual process. It depends on a number of factors. At the end of this, I'll allude to some of the changing issues that are affecting policing, because we are in a very different context than we were 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think the Commissioner has picked up the point. I suppose the ultimate question is, what is the sufficient policing officer establishment? Where I sit, demand is infinite. Because if you had an infinite number of police officers, they would be out on every street corner, you know, that visible policing element. But we've got to cut your cloth to suit. So we've been through 10 years of austerity. The budgets have been cut by £50 million to what they would have been if they'd gone unchecked, I suppose. Commissioner's quite right. Pre-austerity, we had 1,500 police officers in Gwent. We went all the way down as far as sort of 1190. We're back up to 1330. The saving grace is the Stay in the Head 8 programme, which systematically assesses the various aspects of Gwent Police, has determined they're in one particular area, so the CID in the local policing areas and the public protection unit, to meet the demand just faced by that area, is 30 police officers short because of the increase in vulnerability, the increased domestic violence, all those aspects, the child sexual exploitation aspects. So the predominant amount of this growth, the 40 extra officers, 30 are needed immediately in the public protection unit. And also within the report, we talk about the utilisation rates of response officers. So response officers should be running about an 80% utilisation rate. So that 20% is left for proactive activities. We have officers working at 93, 94% utilisation rates. So you think about the health and well-being, you think about the efficiency, you think about the effectiveness, you think about their ability to do proactive interventions. So the other 10 officers are what we want to put into the front line to help bolster that response and neighbourhood policing bit. So it's difficult to get a macro view of what is the appropriate number of officers in Gwent. But if we systematically assess each individual unit, then the sum of those parts should start approaching what we think would be a sufficient and appropriate, affordable policing model. Hopefully that.
Peter, you're happy with that?
Not happy, but I can understand because the response of the police, for whatever reason, seen by the public, is not good. You know, I get people coming up to me in the street and say, "Oh, shop's been burgled 4 times. Police didn't turn up. Guys smashing the door down with a sledgehammer. No one came." You know, that kind of thing. And that's not good. That's not good for the public's perception that they're asked to pay more money, but they don't seem to be getting, or seem to be getting less, actually, less coverage. Whether it's because crime is increasing faster than we can get police officers on the ground, I don't know.
Can I add something? Just, I think one of the reasons, particularly in the interim, and I think we have mentioned before, that it doesn't appear to be so many, even though we've had this increase, is while they're probationary, they're paired with others. So it actually reduces the amount of time that the more experienced officers have, because they're either tutoring or paired up with probationary officers. So I think because we've been in this process now for a couple of years, I quite strongly believe, and the Chief Constable believes, that you will start to see the difference and the increase making an impact over the next year because of people coming out of that process and being ready to work on their own.
Jill? Oh, didn't catch.
Sorry, Chair, my apology. Just to pick up on Sean's side to put some sort of context around it. If you appreciate, we've had over 400 new officers in the last 3 years. So we're running about 40% of officers have got less than 2 years service. So that's that aspect. And also one thing, and it's not a reason, but it's a compounding factor, is the degree of resources going to what I call hidden criminality. So appreciate the balance you're always trying to address is about threat, harm and risk. Where's your highest threat? Where's your highest harm? Where's your higher risk? And deploy your resources therein. And you think about the hidden criminality of child sex exploitation, online, I suppose, criminality, cyber criminality, missing people, missing vulnerable adults, all those aspects. Very much the policing response is hidden to the general public. Domestic extremism, counter-terrorism work, you don't see it, but by virtue of do you feel safe? So it's a tough, it's not an answer, but it's sometimes just how you prioritise that demand and tackle the hidden criminality which keeps us safe that you don't always see. So I think there's that context as well.
Catching them is always good news, yes. And that would build confidence in the public if there was more announcements that they'd caught X number of people doing X number of crimes.
Yeah, that's a good point you just brought up there. Okay, Jill?
Thank you, Chair. Page 30 and 31, you refer about the survey findings. When I looked on Facebook and on Twitter, there was a lot of comments made, not, I guess, in response to the survey, but in terms of the Facebook posts. So, and there was an awful lot of negative comments that came through on there. In terms of the findings, have those comments been taken into account in your figures, or is it purely the people that actually completed the survey or spoke to your communications officers?
With your permission, Chair, I will ask Rodri Guest, my Head of Communications, to comment on this. Can I also crave your indulgence? If you see me stand up, as I'm about to do, it's not a protest. I've got a trapped sciatic nerve in my leg, and it's given me some jip. The only relief I can get is standing up, but we'll see how it goes. But look, I think it's fair to say that we have focused in terms of these figures on the responses to the consultations, whether face-to-face or online. But we do follow up and read the Facebook comments as well. But that tends to be as a separate exercise. But I wonder if I could, with your permission, Chair, ask Rodri Guest to comment.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I can't add too much more to what the Commissioner said in terms of how it got impacted into the survey. We did collate all the comments, and they all get fed back to the Commissioner, but then they didn't go into the SNAP survey because their comments not actually answering the question. So whilst we did collate them and we have put them all together into a document to feed into the Commissioner, they didn't then go into the survey separately.
Thanks, Roger, for that clarification. I think there probably is a weakness in that then, because a lot of people in the Facebook comments were saying, no, I don't support it, no, I don't support it. And if you're going to put something out there in the public arena for people to comment on, if they choose not to go into the survey, but they're giving you that element of feedback, you know, it's a missed opportunity, I believe.
I think you're absolutely right. The survey, the detailed survey report, so we have a rather large document that will be presented to the Commissioner's Management Board at the end of February. And what we really get into the weeds of there are the free text comments within the survey. So appreciate the papers today just present the headline figures. What's far more valuable, absolutely far more valuable, is the free text survey and the themes coming up from there. And I think you're absolutely right. I think for future years, with the growth in social media, or individuals who may not actually fill out the survey, but will get that groundswell of opinion, I think we certainly need to capture that next year. We can perhaps liaison with you moving forward, post our management board meeting where we consider the free text, perhaps have a little chat around how we can really get the full flavour of that survey to pick up the free text and the, I suppose, the ripples out.
Thanks very much. Page 37, you refer to Wendy Williams' HMIC response, and I guess this is to give us some assurance that Gwent Police are doing the job that they're receiving the budget to do. She talks about her being satisfied, but there needs to be some improvements. One of the themes that I personally and the panel have supported me on is about how do you know, how does the PCC know that Gwent Police is performing as it should be and it's demonstrating it's meeting your measures? As a panel member, I still struggle to get the feeling that those measures are being delivered. we're seeing an increase in crime. So how, as the Crime Commissioner, can you be sure that the budget that's been put forward by Nigel Stevens from Gwent Police is actually going to deliver what you want Gwent Police to deliver to meet your measures? How have you got the confidence that the performance is moving in such a way that, you know, within the next year, within the next 2 years, those measures are going to be delivered?
Well, thank you. And this really is a continuation of discussions that we're having right across the board, and certainly in this panel. What we have had difficulty, and I think you'll remember the performance reports that we presented prior to Christmas, it's not always been as easy as we would like to actually capture the police information to be able to map it across to the particular priorities and the outcomes detailed in the plan. That is changing. And I'm confident that going forward, and with your support, we will have that type of matrix and material available. I can say unequivocally that I am confident through the procedures that we have in place, such as the Statutory Performance Board, Strategy and Performance Board, and a whole variety of mechanisms where we engage with senior police officers, that the issues raised by the HMIC Inspectorate are being taken very seriously. I think it's always good to note that the majority of the reports, the feedback from HMIC of late have been that Gwent Police is good. There are always, of course, issues to be flagged up where improvement is needed, often requiring considerable investment. And that is a matter that we do keep on top of, and with both the Chief Constable on a weekly basis, and then through the statutory meetings that we have where we monitor that level of performance. There are issues with the inspection reports, and many of you will be aware, I've reported on it, that we're moving towards a system of force management statements, which is very much about the force anticipating issues and that forming the basis of self-assessment and a change in the way in which HMIC conduct their reviews and inspections. That's right across England and Wales. That's not just for Gwent. And one of the issues that has been an issue for some time is that HMIC have no remit over the work of the Police and Crime Commissioners or the Police and Crime Plans, yet that document is the main issue that should drive what local policing does in Gwent or anywhere else in England and Wales, yet it is not part of the formal inspection process. So there is a dilemma there that I'm hopeful will be removed. And it needs work in both directions. That's one of the reasons why I'm updating the Police and Crime Plan to reflect the impact, particularly of serious and organised crime on our communities, and so we can coincide a bit more the two separate regimes. So there's quite a bit of work going underway. But look, I don't dismiss for one moment the issues that have been raised here at previous panel meetings, and to give you an assurance that we're working hard on being able to present information in a way that will give you that confidence, that we have confidence in how things are being handled.
Yes, and just to add to that, that I think the mechanism by which we hold the force to account in relation to their performance framework, that there are myself, the Chief Finance Officer, the Chief Executive, and other senior members of staff sit in all of the significant senior performance boards across Gwent Police. And our role within that framework is very much to consider the delivery against expenditure, value for money, and effectiveness. And that is both in terms of the financial delivery, but also the delivery of operational effectiveness. And that is across all corporate functions. And we continue to review, challenge, support, and really want to fine-tune that. And I think it is a point about us ensuring that we evidence that scrutiny and that we can demonstrate that genuinely this is an honest request and appraisal of the financial situation and demand for Gwent Police.
Thank you, Jill. And I suppose to answer the ultimate question is, are you investing in the right place, and are you performing in the right place? One part of the equation is the value for money profiles we use for HMIC. So that compares national forces nationally and also within your most similar groups. So those forces that share similar characteristics. So for each component part of our budget, we can assess whether we are more expensive, less expensive, etc. I know Collins has taken a lot of that work forward around where we were outliers. That only answers part of the question. That only says whether you're more economic or more efficient. It doesn't say whether you're effective. So that's where, as we're providing that composite evidence to show you how, hopefully show you how effective we are, we'll have all parts of that equation that I can sit here and say, yes, that investment police officer numbers is justified, it is delivered, look, we are effective, sanction detection rates have gone up, etc., etc. Public satisfaction has gone up, etc., etc., etc. So I'd like to see it all come far more cohesive to the panel's view, because as Larry said, we've got this rich tapestry of the way we hold the force to account, from one-to-ones to formal meetings, etc., etc. But as we coalesce that agreed performance framework, you can hopefully see how we are economic, efficient, and effective. And perhaps we can think more about how we glue together financial and performance for panel reports into the future.
Thanks, Darren. That was really helpful in that context. So, Commissioner, if we look at the 4.9...
Jill,
oh,
are you happy to give way? Bill wants to come on the same point with it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Words like, are you investing, are you performing, are you effective? On civil parking in the city of Newport and indeed right throughout Gwent and surrounding areas. It's quite easy to measure this. The answer is 0, 0, 0. You have not, and indeed I would say that you have failed over the last 18 months or even longer to ensure that civil parking has been a priority for Gwent Police. There's been a recent Wales Online study done, and the reaction from Gwent Police when they were shown cars parked on every yellow line. You can't see yellow lines in Newport and surrounding areas because there's cars parked on there. There's cars parked on pavements. Buses can't get through correctly. They're damaging cars. People are losing the will to live in their neighbourhoods because they can't get parked, because there's cars dangerously parked, not just on double yellow lines, but on zigzags and on corners. So you have failed, and these are the people that that you're asking to support you in an increase, to give the police powers to carry out their duties. When you speak to police officers, and indeed the comment came back to the Wales Online investigator, what's going to happen, and the person reporting on behalf of Gwent Police said it's not a policing priority. So here we have crimes being committed every day in cities, in residential areas, and I know it's not the police officer's fault because he's being directed by those above. And the direction obviously is you don't enforce civil parking. And it's not just civil parking, it's the responsibility of you, Commissioner, to make sure that the police carry out what their duty is. And that's to protect and to serve the public of our surrounding areas. And you have absolutely failed 100% in that. And you've come here and you're asking for the public to support you and to support the direction. And they want to. Wholeheartedly, they want to support you. But your record on parking is disastrous. I know that in the future it's being taken away from you. And I feel it's being taken away from you, not because you made a great success, because we made an absolute pig's ear of it. And I can't wait, I never thought I'd say this, for the local authorities to take it away from you. And maybe then we'll see the expectation of people rise with
Bill, I
the
think
response.
you've made your point.
Yes, thank you very much. The easy answer for me to say is that this is an operational matter. It was a decision of the Chief Constable. And in terms of the decriminalisation of parking, which is what we're talking about here, it is now almost 2 years since the 5 local authorities in Gwent were notified by the then Chief Constable, Jeff Farrar, that this would become a civil matter and it would revert, as is the case already in the rest of Wales and most of England and Wales, back to local authority responsibility. It is, of course, the local authorities that set the parking restrictions, and it would make sense that they enforce it as well, which works fairly well across the rest of Wales. Having said that, I understand the issue of prioritising officers' time. And parking, unless of course it's clearly dangerous, in which case there is police action, and I know that many tickets and action are taken by police officers and PCSOs across the various communities in Gwent. Unless it's a significant matter, yes, they would tend to be allocated to other work of a more pressing nature. One of the problems, and this does come back to what we're talking about today, which is money, is that it was definitely a lost leader, if you like, in terms of policing, because when fines were issued via Gwent Police, any money brought in had to go back to the Treasury. We couldn't retain it. Local authorities, however, can retain the fines. So it can be, if properly used and enforced, an income stream as well as a much greater deterrent in terms of illegal and inconsiderate parking. So there are numbers. I don't accept the issue of failure. I think it's recognising what the reality has to be for policing. And I'm sorry if that is the perception, or I can't comment on what individual police officers may have said to you. It is a policing matter in the sense it's operational for the Chief Constable, and I believe it's been referred to a number of times in this panel as well. I don't think there's anything more I can add, Chair.
Chairman, just a supplementary. It's not what they've said to me, it's what they've said to Wales online, what they've said to the national press. It is not a policing priority. You speak about them if it's dangerous. Well, parking on corners where people can't get round. I mean, obviously, you haven't walked the same streets that I've had to walk. And I've had to walk
Bill, I think
between
you've made your point. Jill, I'm sorry, you gave way. Can you...
Just one final point, actually. When the panel retired, obviously, to discuss this, if they was to say, for example, and I don't know this, we haven't discussed it, say we veto it and we say 1% drop, we're not going to look for that. What would be your measure that you would have the greatest concern about achieving if the panel were to consider that the 6.99 was not to be approved?
If the panel exercised its power to veto, as it has every right to do, we would need to go back and look very, very carefully. We would not adopt a trivial approach of just knocking 0.01% off or something like that. If you wanted a lower figure, we would look at it seriously. But it could impact, and I was going to make this point towards the end, but look, as you've asked the specific question, in terms of modern policing, we now have to deal with roughly half of all, as does every police force in England and Wales, half of all crime is now cyber-related. That has huge impacts in terms of equipment and the skill sets that police officers have. More and more, we're having to deal with counter-terrorism and domestic extremism. There's a lot of safeguarding work, which I'm very proud of, especially with our most vulnerable people and groups that I want Gwent Police to be in the forefront of delivering. We are doing more and more work on dealing with domestic violence, which is not easy because it's often tended to be a hidden crime, but we're getting far more reports now, usually from women, not only from women, often, sometimes it's from men, but usually it's from women, about domestic abuse that's really affecting their lives. And I want to be sure that we have the mechanisms to deal with those types of crime. And of course, tackling child sexual exploitation, which is linked very often to the issue of cybercrime. And finally, I made this point when we met before Christmas, where you had a presentation from Mandy Venn on the work of the Human Trafficking and Modern Slavery Unit. I'd be broken-hearted if we had to stop that work of that unit, and all that would be in the consideration.
So
I think maybe
and then Darren. I think really just wanting to reassure or provide the assurance to the panel that this is an honest bid. This isn't a smokes and mirrors, and it's certainly not looking at asking for over what Gwent Police require. I think what we've tried to demonstrate in our meeting in December and our meeting today is by very much being totally transparent in what the Chief Constable has professionally assessed that the requirements of Gwent Police are for the next financial year, and that we have undertaken as the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner to scrutinise that. And I can give you my assurance that Darren in particular goes through each line of the budget, and I know is supported by yourselves in the Finance Subcommittee and the work that Colin in particular has provided in ensuring that there aren't any elements of overinflation on any budget line. And I certainly was part with Darren 2 years ago of absolutely scrutinising within an inch, a millimetre of every budget line to assure that there was nothing on those budget lines that we didn't feel were genuine costs that needed to be incurred by Gwent Police. So I think the specific question, I think that the Chief has been very upfront with us in relation to the aspirations of what we want to do to protect and safeguard people in Gwent would have to be curtailed in some areas. And those are areas that he would then have to consider from his, within his gift in terms of delivering for the budget. But I think that he's made it very clear that some of the elements of the work that we hold very dear that potentially aren't frontline policing responsibilities like the mental health practitioners in the control room might be areas that we are not able to prioritise. And I think those will be the very tough and the very real decisions if we're not able to secure the funding that we have judged is the absolute minimum requirement for Gwent Police for next year.
Thank you very much.
That's a really, really good question. Just for context, difference between 6.99% and 5.99% is £1 million. Or half a million pound. Get it right? £500,000. Get it right. Important I get it right today. £500,000. The budget is a mix, and Larry's absolutely right. This is an honest bid. And I think we've already laid out, we are going for the lowest precept in England and Wales. So although the floodgates have been opened by the government for the precept flexibility, we are not running into that. We have done a bottom-up, honest assessment of the budgetary need and landed at a scientific figure, which the differentiate would be £500,000. And I think what's important in the budget mix today is the amount of investment in proactive, preventative work, which is the easy areas you cut. You know, you cut advertising budgets, don't you? And then you wonder why your company's gone bust in 5 years' time. Well, you cut the easy stuff. So there's a lot of stuff in here that is prevention around reducing future demand, current and future demand, and also around delivering future efficiency schemes. We've talked about the investment in mobile data technology, which will up the productivity. So when we link it back to how many police officers numbers do we need, yes, we need X, but they need to be highly productive. So a lot of the investment here today is around making those officers as productive as they possibly can through use of mobile data, etc., linking in with other partners around delivering prevention to reduce officer demand into the future.
Just one little point on there. They need to be productive, but as far as the public is concerned, the efficiency and the economic side, etc., those are secondary. Effective. They have to be effective.
Jim, you finished? Okay. Peter, I believe you wanted to come in. No, Peter Nuttall. No, you've absolutely exhausted. Peter Clark.
Whoops. Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, did I miss at the beginning of the meeting an apology? We don't have a Chief Constable or a Deputy Chief Constable?
No, the Chief Constable does not routinely attend this. It's by invitation, usually, but he did make a presentation at the last meeting on the bid. He was not due to attend this one.
Okay, thank you. I sit here with Tony to represent Monmouthshire. We had a negative settlement from Welsh Assembly Government. Within that settlement, we've had to find £2 million to pay teachers extra pensions. And our officers and our lead members have done that. We haven't been in the glorious position of being able to add that to budget. We've had to find it, and we are still desperately trying to find money to make our budget balance at the end of the year. I would be absolutely hung out to dry if I was part of a settlement here this morning. Having said all that, we look as though we can come in at about 5.99%, which is more than we wanted to. We originally wanted to come in at 4.99, but because of all the pressures we're getting, we can't get it lower than 5.99. I know when I met with you before Christmas, Darren, that I was concerned about the £1 million which has appeared in here for proposed riots, which may go on if we get the M4. That hasn't come about. We may never see the M4. So is that £1 million up for grabs? If we get an announcement from Welsh Assembly Government the next week that they're not going to go along with the M4 Relief Road, that money becomes surplus, I presume, and therefore that could be considered by you at this juncture.
I'll pick up the 3 points, I think, in order. I suppose the first point is around austerity journey. So I think it's about the ability to find additional savings in policing. So we've been on the austerity curve since 2010, where we had huge grant reductions that I believe Welsh local authorities did not suffer 6% reductions in 11-12, 5% reductions in 12-13. So we've had our cash grant cut at 25% cash terms, 40% terms for that time, and found £50 million of the savings. So the ability to find opportunities within the overall budget to find the savings that we would need to balance the books are becoming less and less. But we did say at the outset, the investment in policing is being paid half through precept, half through savings elsewhere. So I think there's that bit. Also, I think we've got to be mindful when we talk about precept comparators at the percentage terms, they are different in cash terms. So 6.99% to Gwent Police is £16.69 a year additional to Band D precept. £5.99 in Monmouthshire is about £77 extra a year on precept. So there's a 5-time ratio. So the percentage doesn't necessarily mean we're going up the same. So I think there's that aspect. And you're right, the M4, the intelligence, it would be remiss of us not to put it in there. So the cost in the annual policing cost, we estimate, taking on board other forces who have been through this kind of protest, so you think about the fracking sites in Lancashire, etc., they are multi-million-pound policing responses each year. And all we've built into the budget is less than a third of what we believe that policing response would cost. We think it'll be £3.5 million a year, because we don't have the sufficient number of officers in Gwent to police that 4-mile corridor, off-road, etc., etc. So we're going to rely on other forces. So it's a £3.5 million hole per year for 4 years. So that's a £14 million gap. We're working on the basis we'll get some money off Home Office to fund that. At this point in time, with my statutory hat on, it would be remiss of me not to put to one side £1 million pressure that I see. If it doesn't come to fruition, you will see in our plan significant need to borrow into the future, because reserves and committed funds, they are committed, they are finite. If we wanted to deliver a sustainable policing model, then we're going to need to borrow into the future. All that money would do, if it wasn't committed next year, would offset my borrowing need. I've got the threat of Brexit. I've got 3.5% interest rates we're going to have to fund for long-term borrowing of 25 years. So I've got significant risk in my Brexit camp. So come March the 29th, try to think what inflation interest rates would be. So I would simply de-risk that element, perhaps with that money, if that helps. Peter.
Thank you. Can I just one other? On page 11, it gives the council tax bands. This 6.99% you're addressing this morning is attached to Band D. But if we go up the bands, that percentage increases, doesn't it? It's not the same percentage on every band. The percentage goes up.
It would be 11/9 on the next band up.
Yeah, and so on. just making the point, and you can all see from that chart, and here it comes, we in Monmouthshire pay a disproportionate amount because of our band mix. Our band mix, we have higher grades of bands. And it's not because the people are wealthy, it's because the property is valuable. And that is the problem. So we in Monmouthshire, the pensioners in Monmouthshire are paying for the millionaires in Gwent. And I always have... I will always take objection to that. We're going to need a great friend at the Home Office to get this damn business sorted out. So we pay the correct proportion here in Monmouthshire.
Peter, you always make that point. Yeah. Colin.
Thank you, Chair. Could I thank the Commissioner, first of all, for his presentation, and Darren for the detail. We could spend all day on this, Chair, and probably tomorrow as well if we delved into all the detail. And again, could I thank Darren for his responses to various questions I put. Yet again, Chair, I feel like a tightrope walker. We all want good service, but we've got to consider the impact on the taxpayer. And we've heard about public confidence earlier. Neighbourhood policing, somebody walking down the street in uniform, does help to bring confidence. I know we've already discussed this, but you know, the fact that somebody walks past a police station which is open, even though they seldom go into it, instills confidence. And the thing that concerns me about this bit is that it was really dropped on us at the last moment by the Chief Constable and in the last meeting, and we didn't really have much time to discuss it there. And all the paperwork, of course, the background papers were based on 4.49 or 4.99. So, you know, it's something which is, you know, suddenly happened. And again, I appreciate that it's come out of various work that has been done behind the scenes onto adequacy of different sort of departments. And again, acknowledging the UK government drop in support. And there have been huge cuts in support, and all we've been doing is basically balancing the lesser amount of money coming from London by, in fact, increasing our council tax. There was a gesture on pensions this coming year, but I believe it's only for 1 year. So, you know, the minister who gave everyone permission to raise by 10%, I don't imagine he's on the breadline. I wouldn't have thought he is really, but there we are. And I mean, Jeff did say that we did actually receive 1.5 million over expectation, but again, that's just something in the pot, and again, it's probably 1.5. I'm very pleased that neighbourhood policing is an outlier. We're actually spending more on neighbourhood policing, and of course, some of that is, I believe, is down to the Welsh Government and the fact that they support the PCSOs. So we're likely to be an outlier compared with forces in England because they don't have that support. And is it 101 PCSOs that are funded in Gwent? So that is a good thing. There are less good things, and again, had discussions about the how much ICT costs us in comparison with various other places. I think, Chair, we got a very difficult debate to have maybe after this particular discussion, and obviously the Commissioner's got a difficult decision to take afterwards. But we have got to work on public confidence. But I say it can't just be at the expense of the council taxpayer, because unfortunately, whatever you do, even when it's in the council situation where the main councils are looking to cut services, they're often passing these on to town and community councils, or by the way, dig your hand in your pocket for a bit more. And you know, it all comes one on top of the other to people who are very often struggling, and there's no shortage of reports in the media about the various ways in which people are struggling, or in fact people don't even have a home to go to somewhere. So I'll leave it at that, Chair, but I say it's a very difficult balancing act that we've all got in front of us, really.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. I reiterate the points that Peter made about the Peter Clark made about the M4 related pressures. I believe that before that was put before us, I think some statistical evidence should be made as to what has happened in the next 12 months. We've had a month without the tolls. We haven't had a decision on the M4 relief road. That could come tomorrow, could come in a few months' time. So I don't believe we've got enough evidence to suggest that we need that contribution at this moment in time. The other question I also question is the additional revenue contribution to capital. I'd like some more information as to why there's £1 million needed for that. There's obviously an answer from Darren. That's my main questions, but I was concerned about the survey. It's difficult to run surveys, I know, but there's an indication from me, reading the survey, that if you're doing an online survey, which is anonymous, you tend to get you are getting a different answer than when you do it face-to-face, which suggests to me that when a face-to-face survey is carried out, is the recipient of the survey guided into a decision rather than what they would do anonymously? So I am concerned that I don't believe that the surveys are a very good indication to us as to a way forward. But the other two questions about the £2 million, yes, I'd like some idea on that.
If I'll leave you first to the substantive questions for Darren to deal with. On the issue of the survey, and I'll ask Rodri to confirm this, as we said, we began as early as we could this year on the basis of what we thought the case was likely to be, linked very much to the 4.99%, which was the medium-term financial figures at that time. And so we began it, and it was done on that basis, and we've had the responses in that I've already referred to. Once it became clearer that those calculations were not really up to date for the reasons I've already alluded to in terms of the provisional settlement figures, I then said, well, we have to try and get some more up-to-date responses, and the only way at that time was to do it by the already consultation exercises, the plans that we had in terms of meeting people. So that was my instruction, to do it that way. I think Roddy will confirm it was as neutral as possible. We were very careful not to guide people towards the answers that we wanted, and we did our best under those circumstances. Is there anything you would want to clarify on that?
No, I'd just like to reiterate the Commissioner's comments. There was no leading questions. It was very open. We did 19 events across Gwent, totaling 81 hours. We were very active. We were speaking to people, and it wasn't a led process. It was very much we would try and engage with people, and then when it got quieter, when it was busy, people would come to us, and when it was quieter, we'd try to engage with people. We did the same conversation with everyone. It starts off, where are you from? And then we're from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. We're asking people if you would support the principle, and people would pretty much give a gut instinct reaction. Very few people deliberated beyond that. I would say that we over those 19 events, we engaged with more than 1,000 people, and it was around 80% of all people said yes. And I'd also say that in terms of the people who said no, the vast majority of people, because they tended to be the people we had the longer conversations with, the vast majority of people said no because of visibility, and they actually wanted to see more officers, and that was the feedback. They were basically saying no because I'm not going to pay more and then not have more visibility. So actually, an awful lot of the no's, which were, say, very much in the minority, but they were actually supportive of the principle of more officers. So yeah, I hope that helps. It's also worth mentioning, actually, we did an awful lot of directing people to services as well. So it wasn't just doing that. We took the opportunity to ask people about the updated police and crime plan as well, and people's priorities. We had really good conversations, because I think you've got to go back to the purpose with everything. Why are we doing it? And in order to do this well, we needed to have long conversations and properly speak to people. And once we'd actually filled in the survey, we directed people to other support services, whether that's Connect Gwent or whether it was council issues. And we also got to explain things like serious organised crime, the pressures on the police, but that was all done after they've actually answered the question. I just want to reconfirm really that there was it was not a led process by any means.
Can I come back on that? Yeah. It would indicate to me, you asked the question of 5%, you asked the question of 7.5%. It was quite clear to me from your responses that you didn't even consider going to the 10% request. Am I correct in that? £2 a month.
Yeah, no, we didn't. And the conversation when we were doing the face-to-face was around, it's a ballpark figure up to £1.50. So no, we never did £2 at no point.
So was the indication somewhere between those two to be real?
The overwhelming response of people who engaged with us was positive, about 5 in 6, and that's representative of the 19 events. I probably did about half of them, and overwhelmingly people were positive. Yeah, we even had people who'd say yes, but they still, and we made notes on all this. We still would write down that they wanted to see more visibility.
Darren?
Just to pick up on your first two interlinked points, but I'll do them in reverse. So the revenue contribution to capital that you've highlighted, the £1 million next year and the year after. There's 5 ways you fund your capital programme, and it's almost like a ladder of pain. So the best way to fund it is through government grant, capital grant. As the Commissioner said in his introduction, we get about £500,000 of government grant each year, which pays for less than half of the fleet replacement programme. So it doesn't go anywhere near ICT, estate and other capital investment opportunities. The second place you kind of go is revenue, a revenue contribution to capital, because you know that's a recurrent stream, because capital is a continual investment regime. You always need to maintain capital. It's false economy if you don't, because things just break and fall down. It's like you keep the upkeep on your house, for example. The third place you go is reserves and committed funds, but they're finite. So if you look at our reserves and committed fund schedule in here, you can see they get depleted in 2 years' time, because they're generally designed to fund the capital programme. The fourth place you go is asset disposal. We don't have any significant assets that we can dispose of. If we were in the Met selling some of their buildings for multi-million pounds, they've got a bit of a better asset disposal stream than us. And the fifth place you go is external borrowing. The risks, the costs. So we're running about 3.5% APR on a 25-year loan. So as it stands even today, with that £1 million revenue contribution to capital, there's a requirement to borrow over £38 million from 2021 onwards. So any opportunity I've got to de-risk that, to reduce that figure, I would take. So by putting £2 million revenue contribution to capital in over the next 2 years, $1 million and $1 million, on top of the 575,000 we got in there now, we've only got £2.5 million of revenue contribution to capital. I'd be interested to do the analysis to what other forces. I know what South Wales have got in their revenue contribution to capital. Be interested to see what other local authorities and forces have, and I suspect it'd be considerably higher than what Gwent have as a revenue stream into the capital programme. So linking to your M4 conversations, I've already said if the M4 doesn't come to fruition, I would use that I would just revert that to a revenue contribution to capital, because it will minimise my risk of exposing the Commission to £38 million worth of investment over the future. And it is all about getting that sustainable fit-for-purpose estate, sustainable fit-for-purpose ICT that will make us more productive. So you should see the fruits of your labours coming through into police productivity, morale, sickness levels, etc., etc. It's all part of the same equation as far as I can see.
So the £1 million for the M4 is really a contingency fund for whatever you might need in the year. Equally, the contingency fund of £1 million this year will pay for the fleet replacements, just over £1 million. Under today's austerity, is it really important that we use that M4 related pressure and look at it in a different way?
From an operational perspective, it is a clear and present. So I think rather than use the word contingency, contingencies has connotations of low probability. I'm using an accounting phrase now. We put contingencies in if we can't put a figure on it. The probability is quite low. That is a clear and present danger based on a decision that's going to go black and white. We don't know whether it's going to go black or white. It's a binary decision. If it goes to the yes, based on operational intelligence of other forces, that will cost Gwent £3.5 million a year for the next 4 years to police. So if it was a contingency, I'd probably say, and I do this, let's underwrite it from reserves. So there's other points I go through before it lands on this schedule. There's a significant dialogue I have with the chief officers in the force to say likelihood, impact, and if it gets through onto this schedule, as Larry said earlier, that's been through several rounds of governance, and we've really said, so there is a briefing note. I think what I can do post today is share with you the operational briefing note, suitably worded. I have a copy with me today that articulates what that cost is, what the likelihood, what the scientific process the force have got through to establish that figure today.
Yeah, I think that would guide us in our deliberations, in particular the comments made across the table.
When the council tax is put through the door to the people of the borough, the first two things they see is the police and the town councils. And when I've been a councillor now for 12 years, and when we come out into the community then, they say, well, what are we paying this for? What are we paying the police precept for? We've got no policemen on the beat. When we got a problem, we got to deal with PCOs. Is there anything in your budget to put more policemen on the beat? Or is the policeman dead in the water and we're relying on PCOs?
Well, if I may, I think, in fairness, this has been referred to. We do have a programme of ongoing recruitment. We are increasing our numbers. We have significantly increased our numbers in terms of net gains since 2015. We want to continue that. Of course, that means we have to have the cash in the bank to enable us to recruit those new police officers. It's never been a question of relying on PCSOs. We welcome the additional contribution, the voluntary contribution from the Welsh Government, which puts us in a very much better place than our colleagues in England, and they're quite jealous of the support that we have here. But PCSOs are meant to be, where they're based, out and about, the eyes and ears on the street of the police service in Gwent, and they'll then report back on their findings, and they'll take information and intelligence from members of the public. So please be assured the issue of more policing is definitely not dead in the water. It's a key priority for us. I hope I've outlined that the issue of increasing neighbourhood policing teams is a constant issue that's raised with me. I take it very, very seriously. And despite all the other pressures on policing, it will continue to have a top-ranking focus.
Just to add some context to that, in 2016-17, there was 1,196 police officers in Gwent. As of today, as part of this budget proposal, there'll be 1,330. So a growth of 144 officers. So the precept this panel has helped us deliberate and agree over the last 3 years has grown the police officer establishment by 104. So the extra 40 we're talking about today grows it by the 144. So the precept today maintains the 104 we've already invested in, extra bodies. This is establishment, not actuals, because the actual amount of officers you have flows through the years, people leave and people start. It's about what we can budget for. So the budgeted number of officers has grown by 104. Today's precept wants to add another 40 onto that. So in answer to your question, yes, there are more officers as part of this precept deliberation.
Yeah, you said in your report, excuse me. You said in your report that you need these detectives and all these sort of people. The people out there need the bobbies on the... I'm not criticising the PCOs. In Pontypool, we got a wonderful set of PCOs. I got to be honest, they are absolutely great. But the people would like to see the bobbies on the beat.
Pick up on that point. So of the 40 extra officers, the report says 30 are going to go in to deal with vulnerability, 10 are going to the front line. For context, 10 police officers is £500,000. The difference between 6.99 to 5.99 is £500,000.
last but not least, Stuart, and then we'll have an intermission for our deliberation.
Thank you, Chair. Well, my notes suggest that we've been all discussed. I'd like to remind Darren mind that we've all been in austerity since 2010. That includes Joe Public out there.
Yes,
you
yeah.
know. And then to go and ask them to another 6.99, the first thing they will say to me, 400 new officers, where are they? Certainly in Blaenau Gwent, we would like to see an officer, and never mind 400 officers, because they are very scarce in Blaenau Gwent. The other point I would like to make, that the Commissioner has said about police being under pressure. We're all under pressure.
Yeah.
Everyone. And as I say, that includes Joe Public. I'm finding it with some difficulty, to find support for the 6.9 and 9%. Because if I go back to Blaenau Gwent and tell them what you proposed, they'll just laugh me out of the chamber. And I wouldn't certainly tell the public, because they got no confidence in the police at all at the moment.
Thank you.
Yep. I believe we've got another question for... Oh, we haven't had yet. Do you want to make any comment?
Well, I wanted to make some closing comments, and I think I can, to save time, I can embrace it in that.
Jill?
Yeah, just one quick comment. On page 29, you refer to it being £1.50 a month. £1.39 per month, sorry.
There was a note came out on that at the start.
Yeah,
of the,
there's what, yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Is that council tax is paid over 10 months? Is
Yeah.
that
No.
per month, or is that based
No,
on a
that's just divided by
12-month
12.
period?
Yeah, that's
period.
a 12. You're right.
Right, thank you.
I did think about putting, do I divide it by 10?
I can credit Peter for the question.
Brilliant question, yeah. I thought long and hard, do I divide it by 10, divided by 12? Yeah.
That's over 12 months.
Really good point. Yeah.
Okay, we happy about that?
It's got more expensive, yeah.
Yeah. Commissioner,
By a fifth. Oh,
Commissioner, we're going to go into a recess very shortly, but you wanted to make any...
Yes,
conclusion?
thank you very much. I've listened very carefully to all the questions, the responses, and the general debate. And I'd just like to make these points, particularly from following on the points from Councillor Mann. This is, for me, a balancing act. Commissioners right across England and Wales, we're between a rock and a hard place. Purely in terms of Gwent, as things stand at this moment, the financial projection with the regular reduction in central government funding and the increase in local precepts, unless there's a significant change, and that has to be led by the UK government, which we can only influence, not control, by 22-23, we will exceed the 50-50 split, with the citizens of Gwent, or the council taxpayers of Gwent, paying more than half of the total policing budget for Gwent. Some police force areas are there already. We're not, but we're rapidly getting in that direction. But that is a balancing act for me, and I am determined to do my very best to make sure that sufficient funds are available for Gwent Police to carry out the work that they need to do. I've alluded already in response to a question from your Vice Chair about the changes on policing pressures, and I understand and acknowledge the issue of the need for visibility as far as the public in general is concerned. I hope I've mentioned that. And I accept absolutely that austerity across the public sector in Gwent has a major impact, and it certainly promotes policing as a service of last resort and first resort. For example, the contribution we now make, and we do it willingly, but not without some heartache because of money, to, for example, the mental health practitioners in the force control room. We are in discussions with the Iron Bevan Health Board, hopefully to get that as a shared cost. But at the moment, we are paying that cost, and will continue to do so for as long as it does bring benefits to policing, and more importantly, the people who are caught in that situation. And you do need to remember that investment in policing in Gwent needs to be viewed in the context of, for every crime averted or victim put back on the road to recovery, the economic contribution is usually immeasurable. Now, I'll conclude on these remarks, if I may. We have tried to stress that we have not gone the whole hog in what we would be allowed to do by the UK government. That is to raise the precept by over 10% without any intervention from themselves, or for that matter, from the Welsh government in terms of links to council tax. We have avoided that. We are proposing the lowest rate within Wales. I'm not going to name forces because they've still got their own considerations to do, but at this moment, 2 of the 4 Welsh forces are going for more or less the full £24, and the other one is going for less, but still a bit more than we want. So bear that in mind. And I think it's fair to say that the Chief Constable was under some pressure from his peers to go for the full 24, trying to build up safeguards against the unknown cost of the future. I resisted that. And so I don't think that's justified. I think we can work with proper planning and accountability on a lower figure, which we've already alluded to before Christmas, of 6.99%. And that is my submission to you. It's something that we've looked at very carefully. I know the volume of work that Darren and his colleagues have put into this, under the parameters I've set, that it's no more than 6.99, and we've got to come in on that figure. But I don't want there to be any misunderstandings. As has just been pointed out, austerity has affected every public service across Gwent. Yes, it does, and that includes the police. And we're in the same position that many of your councils are in. And with those remarks, I'll leave it there, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for everyone making their contributions. We now go into recess to deliberate. Okay, if everyone could leave now.
My compliment.
Need some lights, Peter.
Can you put them on?
It's as complicated as the ones we got.
Okay, thank you very much. We've had the recess, and can I now move that I propose that we accept the 6.99% precept. Could I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Can we now go for the vote, please? Those in favour?
1, 2, 3, 5, 6.
Those against?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There's no abstentions, is there?
Abstentions?
Okay. So that's carried, isn't it?
That's carried.
Yep. So that has been carried. There is something which I want to say personally, and the fact we would like the Police Commissioner to review the £1 million allocated for the M4 Relief Road, and in view of the fact that it needs to be reviewed, the situation, it's something nobody knows for sure at the moment, and that before, there's no formal decision being made on that. We are asking, can you look at that from the point of view that, there's a question mark about it, and that there's a possibility of, if it doesn't come about, then this amount of money can be used for other purposes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I am pleased, of course, that you've accepted our bid. We look forward to receiving the confirmation letter to that effect, which no doubt will include the caveat about the £1 million for the Relief Road. That is a matter then that we will discuss, and we will respond appropriately.
Can I also say it was a very, very difficult decision. I mean, the difficult decisions are your side and our side as well. It's very difficult. Can I say that we all represent the people of Gwent in all sorts of ways? The people, the criminal, obviously the criminal fraternity, the victims, but also the people that have to pay the money, and that's a situation we've all got a responsibility for that. So it's something. It's taken a lot of sweat and tears to come to that situation, and some of my colleagues, as you well know, have voiced their concerns, and I don't want anyone who's ever watching this or you to realise it was a very, very, very difficult decision.
I understand that absolutely, Chair, and by way of response, I'm of course an elected official as well, and I understand the pressures that people are under and the consideration that has clearly gone into this, and I take that very, very seriously as well. And in turn, can I say that I have considered the matter together with my officers before we made the submission to you, and I acknowledge fully the amount of concern and effort that has gone into this decision. Thank you very much.
Okay, if we now move on to the rest of the...
Chair.
Oh, sorry.
I wonder if you could allow me to leave. I want to attend the funeral of Stephen Lewis. I worked with his family over a while. I feel I should go. In terms of the rest of the agenda, I think I can quite comfortably leave you in the safe hands of my Chief Finance Officer, my Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner and the Chief Executive, certainly in terms of the issue of the report and on sickness absence.
And can I say, he was such a young man. Obviously, he needs all the support he can get. Really, it's something which focus all our attention really on the very thin thread of life that we're on, isn't it? Really.
Chair, I'm heading for the same destination, okay, as you know. Thank you.
Okay, we now move on to item 4, which is the performance reporting and sickness absence position statement. I believe that you've, as I understand it, a new scheme has been set up to monitor the situation. So it's still in its infancy, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I have a document that I can share with you all, and apologise for not providing it in advance, but in light of the Commissioner having to leave, then I've got a written statement that I can share with you all. So it's up to you whether you'd just like me to sort of pass it around or if you'd like me to read it. Okay.
Yes, if you would. Thank you.
Is there a headline you'd like to share?
Okay, I just okay. So the position in the first instance, the current position is the Commissioner. Yeah, sorry. Commissioner has obviously had concerns about the levels of absence management within Gwent Police, but is also very encouraged at the same time about the amount of wellbeing work that's going on. Within the statement, we cover the way in which we scrutinise and monitor the force's reporting of attendance management, which has been via the People and Diversity Board that the Deputy Chief Constable chairs. She has, in providing reassurances to the Police and Crime Commissioner, she is confident that much action has been taken in relation to short-term absences and is quite confident with where we are in that respect, but acknowledges that in relation to longer-term absence, there is still work to be done. We completely acknowledge, and I think we've all noted from the previous reports we've received into absence management and the quarterly reports, that they've not been, perhaps the information and the data has not been captured in the most valuable way for us to be able to fully evidence the performance in that regard. So we've been reassured that a new system called the Global Rostering System, which was introduced partly before Christmas and will be fully introduced to Gwent Police and our office by the end of the month, that will allow us to be able to capture data in a way that will permit reports which will have far more value. I am quite reassured. I attend on behalf of the Commissioner all of the People and Diversity Board meetings, but we are also quite conscious that we receive the performance monitoring information there on a sort of bi-monthly basis. So we do receive comparisons, but we've pushed for greater information to go into the annual report, which will be coming to the Commissioner's Strategy and Performance Board on the 5th of June. And that's something that will still obviously have a mixture of data from the previous iTrent system and the current global rostering system, but will hopefully give us a far better baseline to start off from for the future. So it is something that we are speaking to the Chief Constable and his team about on a regular basis. Ultimately, we are reassured either way that the right actions are being taken to address absence management issues, but ultimately the feedback is that that we need, the stress is related to demand, and the number of police officers we have. So I do think that, that the precept decision will go a long way to providing some reassurances back to the chief officers from yourselves and our team that action will be taken in relation to that.
Can I say that I think we all realise the demands in society, and it's certainly changed drastically over the last 10 to 20 years, really. And the fact that people operating in the front line of any service, and it covers anything, that they got to have also, not only as management got to monitor that, but they also got to give them plenty of guidance, plenty of help, both from the mental and the physical situation. And there's more done now than there's ever been, but it's something, obviously we're all concerned about. Yeah.
That looks good, the wellbeing meetings task analyst to identify the statistical relevance in relation to sickness within the groups. Because that would be very interesting, especially the last part, student officers within 2 years of service, and will reflect whether we're picking the right people.
Anybody else? Jim?
Chair.
No?
Councillor Kirby.
Sorry?
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
In the bullet points on the second page on your report, you list following groups So staff by grade, rank, gender, student officers. On the gender one, is there any analysis of people or staff or officers in other protected characteristics and their absence rates?
Yes, they would be. I think this was just a sort of a starting point, really, that we felt that hadn't been properly captured in the past, but the new system will allow for all of those things to be taken into account.
Thank you.
Go on.
Yeah, thank you. Just one question. This is the preliminary report to us. Will we be getting updates on this in the future? Because it's quite sparse to me what's here.
Well, I think if we, with the 18-19 report coming to us on the 5th of June, then I've spoken to the Chief Officers of Gwent Police about perhaps you having a deep dive into this area as following that meeting, because we think that would be a good point after having a full year's data for this year, that might be more valuable information and more timely for you.
Yeah, thanks for that, and that's exactly what we require. If we now move on to item 5, which is the Gwent Police and Crime Panel minutes held on the 14th December. Quickly going through the minutes before we vote on their acceptance. If you look at, first of all, accuracy, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9. Can I ask, everyone happy that they are accurate? And could I also say that the minutes, very good, very readable. I've read them many times, and so can we have a vote that we agree that they? Okay. Right. Any matters arising? Page 1, 2, 3. Well, some minutes is difficult to read, aren't they? Page 4, page 5, page 6, 7, 8 and 9.
Yeah, can I concur with you? Can I concur with you? I think the minutes are concise and accurate, and it actually makes good bedtime reading for those who suffer from insomnia. So, highly recommended.
Yeah. Can I say that Bill always comes out with a little snippet, really? The forward work programme?
Yes, Chair, just a ma'am, there's no changes proposed. As we mentioned earlier, the performance report and sickness absence has been programmed in for June, and then hopefully we'll have some meaningful data for you to report to you by then. I am looking to arrange a training day for the panel, possibly around July. That's normally when I do it. The WLGA are also hoping to organise a training day for panel members as well. We had to defer the last one because not enough take-up, so we're looking at another date as well. But July for members to train. I'm sure Dan would like to come and do a little bit.
I've been asked to do the WLGA, so I'm just forewarning members. If you go to the WLGA, you're going to get 3 hours of me.
They're trying to get people to go.
Can I say that everyone should have a commendation for that, then, really?
Kath,
Jill?
will the revised plan be coming to the March meeting?
Anybody else with any other?
Just one, Chair.
Yeah.
On the training programme, could we avoid the venue in Cardiff and have somewhere more conducive that we can get there and park there and things like that?
Welcome to this free
I think it's difficult with the WLGA, obviously to save funding. The WLGA like to use their own offices because then they don't have to pay for rent to a property, etc. And North Wales, strangely enough, prefer to come to Cardiff because it's easier transport links. Yeah.
It's not a very good place to park,
But I will hopefully be running a training day for just ourselves as well at Caerphilly offices. So if you can't come to WLGA, come along to ours.
So you could actually have 2 helpings of Darren then, eh? Yeah. Okay, that's. I think we've now concluded. Thank you very much for attending. It's the end of the Gwent Police and Crime panel, and thanks for your endurance and your patience. And I hope you have a 2019. Start buying the Christmas presents. Thank you very much. Bye.
See you, Peter.